I was led to you by Patty, and how long you guys have been a neighbor of Patty's?
We have been a neighbor of Patty's for 9 years.
Oh, okay. She was very, she goes, you gotta talk to these guys. So she really, really likes you.
Oh, we're very fond of them, for sure.
That's great. Well, I'm really excited to ask you questions about how you grew up and your feelings and stuff, because where were you originally born? Is it Hungary?
Yes, I was born in Budapest, Hungary.
Budapest. And I guess why I'm so excited about this is Russia currently is invading Ukraine, and they're trying to take that over. I would like to kind of know what it was like as a child, because how old were you? 4 or 5?
I was 3
Oh,
when,
go ahead.
the revolution occurred and Russia invaded, yes.
Okay. And as a child, could you share what it was like growing up before the war and some of your memories and some of the things that you experienced then, and then going through the invasion, etc., etc.? I would love to hear that.
Okay. So, interestingly enough, I was only 3, but I definitely have some very clear memories, although I find it interesting that they're more like snapshots rather than videos of my time in Hungary and our leaving Hungary. But I do remember especially being outside and playing in the backyard of our house. We lived in a house with a yard. And I remember picking parsley along the back fence with my mother.
Go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting.
That's okay. That's okay. And I enjoyed playing in the backyard too, with my dollies and all that. I was an only child, and my parents and I lived with my grandfather, my father's father. And my mother had a job as a doctor's assistant, and so my grandfather would take care of me while she was at work. And the clearest memory I have of my grandfather is that he used to make me lunch, and he'd cut bread into little cubes and bacon into little cubes and put the bacon on top of the bread, and he'd call them little soldiers. And he'd leave them up for me to eat.
Oh, that was so sweet. That was so sweet. And what I see in all the pictures you just sent me, pictures of you and your dolly. What was your dolly's name?
I don't remember.
No. Let's call her Sally for now so we don't hurt her feelings.
Okay.
That's funny. So pretty much during the day, your grandfather took care of you then?
Yes, my mother actually kind of worked like a split shift. I forget the exact hours, but it was like 8 to noon and 4 to 8 or something like that.
Okay. And was she at the local hospital? Is that what it was?
It was a local clinic in our suburban neighborhood.
Okay, so you kind of lived in suburbia back then.
Yes. Yes.
Wonderful. Wonderful. How was the weather like when you grew up? Was it similar to Seattle, or was it cold or hot, or what do you remember as a child?
I remember that in the winters it was cold and snowy.
Severely cold or just cold?
I'm sorry?
Was it severely cold or just cold?
Oh, well, it was colder than Seattle, that's for sure. And I think summers were also a little bit warmer.
Okay. Okay. The reason why is I've been watching some YouTube videos of people it's like 40 below. I was like going, I'd move.
I would too. I don't recall that it was ever that cold.
Yeah, I would definitely move. So the war, Russia invaded, and what was it like to you? What changed in your life?
Well, let's see. Rick, I wanted to say that the Russians and the communists had been there since the end of World War II.
Okay, so they were already there.
they were already there, and that definitely affected, especially there was no practice of religion allowed.
Oh, really?
When I was baptized, my baptismal certificate has a blank for the location, the place of baptism, because we were not allowed to have me baptized in the church. The pastor came to the house and baptized me at the house.
Really? And what faith were you baptized under?
Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholic, okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
was there like zero religion allowed, or just the Christian religion, or what? What was it like?
Of course, I was quite little, but from what I've heard, and we were not allowed to go to church. And if you did go to church, your attendance was noted and made available to the authorities, and it would affect, if you were a working man or something, it would affect your job employment and that sort of thing.
Interesting. I guess they're kind of doing that in China. They call it a social rating or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting.
And I know that many of the clergy were arrested and imprisoned.
So during that time period, if they were arrested and imprisoned, did you ever see them again, or they just disappeared?
Some we did. I know Cardinal Vincenti was a fairly high-profile cardinal who was arrested and imprisoned for quite a while, and then during the Revolution, or just after the Revolution, he sought asylum in the U.S. Embassy, and he lived there from 1956 to 1971.
In Hungary.
In Hungary, and then he was allowed to leave. Yes.
Interesting. So I'm imagining that Russia's already there. They already have dominance. What caused your family to leave?
My father was working with the underground, and so he was on the blacklist. His life was in danger after the revolution failed. And one day he didn't return home. And then a few days later we had a visit from a couple of men who said they had helped him escape to Austria. But we didn't have any knowledge of him planning to leave. He just had to go in a hurry.
So was that true information? Did you run into him again, or what happened there?
Yes, exactly. So he sent these two men were the ones that helped him across the border, and that's kind of what they did, was ferry people across the border. And my father asked them when they came back to Budapest to ask my mother for a clean shirt and some money. And instead, she decided that she and I should go and join him.
Oh.
So I want to say he left in later November, and we left on Christmas Eve on the 24th.
Oh, so it's literally within weeks.
Yes.
And how did they get you out?
Well, it was divine providence, for sure.
Sure, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, God worked very carefully to get us across, and I have memories of getting ready for departure. My mother went to say goodbye to some relatives in another town, and so I stayed with an aunt and her family. And I think I knew something was happening.
You knew something was going. Were you scared, or were you just kind of unsure? You didn't know what was happening.
I think I was a little bit worried. Yeah, because I could tell there was unrest, if you will, a disturbance in the force.
Definitely a disturbance in the force. Well, did they have you leave on train or by airplane or boat? Because I'm unfamiliar with the travel routes out of Hungary.
Yes, so we traveled west to Austria, and we went by train. And these two men instructed us to take the train to a town named Hegyeshalom, which is on very close to the Austrian border. Now, at that time, people were not allowed to just travel freely. And so the fact that we were able to make it on the train all the way to the town without anybody telling us to get off was pretty amazing and miraculous. But we were never quite sure where we were because it was dark and late. And so all of a sudden the train stopped and the Hungarian soldier came on the train and said, "This is Hegyeshalom, you have to get off now, it's the end of the line." Oh, okay, so
okay, we're ready to go. Interesting. And was your father there to meet you when you crossed the border?
Oh no, he was still in Austria. He did not return back into Hungary at that time.
Oh, you're still in Hungary. Okay.
So my mother just packed 3 little storybooks, my baby doll, and a little baby Jesus in the manger out of paper.
Right.
And a change of clothes and a sandwich, and that was it. That's all we took with us.
That's all you needed.
Yeah. So we packed all that up into our bag again and got off the train. And we were one of the last people off the train. And there was a row of soldiers, about 25 soldiers all in a row with guns, and an important-looking person checking everybody's papers at the end of the row. And so my mother was quite nervous because she knew she didn't have the proper documentation to be allowed into that area. And there was a man whose papers were being checked, and he had a small child sitting on a bench nearby who was crying. So my mother just instinctively went over to the child and tried to comfort it and talk to him. And the man finished with his paperwork and came over, said thank you very much to my mother, and chatted for a few minutes and took off. And the important-looking official went back into his little booth. So my mother just took 1 minute and said, "I got to get out of here now." He probably thinks I'm the man's wife.
Oh, that is divine intervention.
Yes, indeed. And so she took my hand and off we went.
Wow.
Yeah, and the men who were helping us out had given us instructions of where to go once we got to the train station. They had an apartment building at the train station, and he and his family lived there. So we went to the apartment there and waited for him. He deliberately came on a separate train the next day so we would not be found traveling together.
That was smart. So you've crossed the border now at this point.
We're still in Hungary.
Oh, you're still in Hungary. Okay.
We're still in Hungary, and we're waiting for the other 2 men to join us. And so we stayed with their family all that day, which was Christmas Day. And I was given strict instructions that we were going to be crossing the border. We were going to be doing a lot of walking, and I would get tired. And I was not to say anything. I was not to speak. And so we practiced going through the room, walking around the room and not speaking.
So, as a little girl, did you like to chitty-chat a lot that you remember?
I don't remember if I did too much, but I really took those instructions to heart.
Right.
So then we took off on Christmas Day at dark and started walking from that town toward the border. And this was a heavy snowfall, so snow was about knee-deep. And I walked for a little ways. Of course, it got a little tough for me to keep going, so I was carried for a while, and then I went piggyback. The 2 men took turns carrying me piggyback. And it was about a 6-7 hour walk to get to the border.
Wow.
The whole time we needed to be watching out for border patrols. And sometimes flares would go up to light up the sky to see if anybody was crossing the border, and we'd have to lie down on the snow to not be seen. And at one point, one border patrol did find us. We saw them coming, and we were hiding behind bushes, very small bushes. And I remember being behind my very own little bush, because they're so small we had to spread out, and nobody else was with me. And I could look to my left and see somebody behind a bush on my left, and look to my right, and a little farther over, somebody to my right behind his or her bush. So there we were. It was pretty scary to be all by myself behind my own bush.
Right.
And the soldiers did find us, which was kind of scary also. And they said, aha, you're trying to escape to the west. Oh, no, we're not. And it turns out that one of these guides did actually have a cousin who lived in a farmhouse on the border. So we said we were going for Christmas dinner at the cousin's house. And they said, yeah, sure you are. We'll escort you and keep you safe, because why are you hiding if you're just going to visit family? And then we said, oh, because we thought you were American soldiers.
And they bought it?
No, they
No.
They said they would escort us to the house, to the farmhouse, so we don't have to be afraid anymore. And so they did. They followed us to the house, and we went inside, and we whispered that my mother was pretending to be the man's wife, and I his daughter, and we finally made it after a long anticipated reunion, and it was so good to see them. We hadn't seen them in so long, etc., etc. And so we went in, and the soldiers stood around for several hours outside, waiting to see if we were going to leave again. And we couldn't really go because right in their living room was the commander of the Border Patrol visiting this family for Christmas.
Really?
So it was a little bit out of the frying pan into the fire.
Probably the safest place to be.
Maybe so. So it turns out this commander person was kind-hearted, and the men explained what we were actually doing. And he said, well, I will tell you when to cross the border and where to go so that you don't get caught. And don't worry, if you do get caught, they'll just bring you to me and I'll let you go. So we weren't sure if he was telling the truth or not.
Right. Right.
So we did follow his instructions, and we made it across.
Fantastic.
So more providence. And then he went out and told the soldiers they could leave because it was all good.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we walked some more, and apparently you could tell when you were actually at the border because the ground had been plowed up and it was much softer under the snow.
Okay.
And so they could tell when they crossed that plowed up area and had actually gone into Austria. And the men said, okay, we're in Austria, we're safe now. My mother said, oh no, we're still too close, I want to keep going.
Yeah, I want a long distance.
So it was a little bit farther until we got to the closest town. And on the way, we passed a haystack. I remember the haystack. And we kind of burrowed into the inside of the stack to get out of the wind and the cold.
Right, just to get warm.
And to try to get warm a little bit, yeah. So I remember the haystack. After a little rest, we kept going, and we arrived at the town of Nikolsdorf. And the local inn there had been made into a refugee center with the Red Cross, and they had a soup kitchen. And they put straw down on the ground, and people just spread out their coats or whatever and slept on the straw. And then I think it was the next day they took us to, or maybe we took the train. Oh yeah, I think we took the train to Vienna.
What do you remember about Vienna? Was that like a really big city for you?
Oh, it was a really big city, and they had streetcars, and they had car dealerships. I wanted to buy one of the red cars in the window.
I want that one. Did they have candy shops too?
They probably did. I don't remember that. But I do remember I had my very first banana.
Ooh.
The first banana in my life, yes.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
Also saw my very first black man.
Oh my gosh.
My mother said my jaw dropped to the floor, and I was just staring at him. I'd never seen anybody with dark skin before.
Right.
Yeah.
That's funny.
She says that he noticed that I was staring and just chuckled.
He just laughed. That's funny. That's funny.
I remember we went to the big amusement park there with what's it called, the Ferris wheel.
Right.
Big wheel, yeah. And there were several organizations that took good care of the refugees. And then the U.S. Air Force flew us to the United States after we applied.
Was it difficult at that time period to get in the U.S.?
We had to go through quite a process of filling out the paperwork, and it was a many-hour, multi-day process. And I know that different countries were taking refugees, and then periodically they would close their borders to new people for a while. And I know that we were considering Canada because we had some relatives in Canada, but Canada closed its borders.
Sure.
Process is called, and so the U.S. was where we ended up.
So I have to ask, because you just had, what was your wedding anniversary that you had with your husband?
Our 45th.
45th. So where did you meet your husband at?
Well, after we arrived in the United States, we first went to a refugee center in New Jersey, and then we settled in Baltimore for a few years. Then my mother had a job at Johns Hopkins Hospital, and she was working in a laboratory, and the whole laboratory was moving to the University of Washington at Harborview Hospital in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
So she's kept her job, moved with the laboratory, and my parents separated at that point.
Okay.
And so that's how we came to Seattle. And then my husband came to the University of Washington for graduate school after he finished his undergraduate in San Diego.
Oh, he didn't come in with a hurt leg or anything.
No.
Kept on coming back. It's still not fixed. Well, that's amazing. That's amazing. So 45 years. You've sent me some pictures. And I sit there looking at the pictures, and you always seem happy. In all the pictures, you always seem happy. And your husband, he's happy, but he just gets better looking. He's got this beautiful head of hair. I mean, I lost my hair when I was like 21 or something. So he's got this beautiful head of hair, and he looks more distinguished over the years.
I would agree.
That is absolutely amazing. That is great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this interview here, and then we're going to interview your husband.
Very good.
So I'm so excited for sharing this. You know, I've spoken to a lot of different people over the years, and I see that a lot of people, it's like they think their life is so tough. And I think to myself, compared to what? I mean, so I hear your story is like going, I don't think you'd like to, exchange places with Judy. But it sounds like you guys have created quite a life. Is that true?
Oh, we've been very, very blessed. We had 3 children, and we have 12 grandchildren.
So. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Wonderful.
So you're out there trying to repopulate the earth then.
Yes, sir.
That's great.
And one of our children, our middle child, our second child, our first son, is now establishing himself back in Budapest. He's moved back, and
Oh, how wonderful.
yeah, so it's really lovely that he's reconnected with family there, and
Interesting. Now, is he married or single?
he's single.
Oh, he's single. Okay, well, watch out for the matchmaker.
Yeah.
That's how. So you're actually going full circle. That's exciting. That is so exciting. We'll just
take very good care of us and blessed us abundantly. And
isn't God good?
yes, indeed. And I'm sure when I left Hungary, he had a plan. So
He had a plan, and it seemed to work out pretty darn good.
yes, indeed. So thank you for this opportunity to share the story and what he's done. And it's been delightful visiting with you, Bill.
All right. Thank you very much, Judy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.